It was a beautiful Sunday morning, and the sky was bright and blue. Veronica had the day off, so she decided to take it easy. The night before, she had been at a party with her friends, and it had gone on quite late. Because of that, she slept in and woke up around 9. Feeling lazy but calm, she stretched, brushed her hair back, and walked to the kitchen to make herself a cup of coffee. With the warm cup in her hand, she went to the sitting room, enjoying the quiet morning. But as she sat down, her relaxed expression slowly faded. Something didn't feel right. Her eyes moved to the floor, and she noticed a few strange footprints leading to another room. The prints were large, much bigger than hers. A worried look crossed her face. She slowly put her coffee down and followed the trail. When she entered the room, everything looked fine at first. Nothing seemed out of place. But when she opened the locker where she usually kept her money and jewelry, she froze. Everything was gone, her cash, her jewelry, even some important documents. Veronica's face turned pale, and she stood there in shock, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to understand what had happened. Without wasting a single moment, Veronica picked up her phone and called the police. Her voice was slightly shaky as she explained everything that had just happened. After a short while, the police arrived at her house and began to look for evidence. When they examined the footprints on the floor, they paused. The prints didn't look human. Seeing that, even the officers looked surprised. Both officers turned to Veronica and asked, "Do you have any suspects in mind? Anyone who might do this?" Veronica shook her head. She had recently moved into the house and didn't know anyone in the area yet. "No," she said quietly. After checking the place once more, the police told her they would continue the investigation and come back later. Then they left, leaving Veronica alone in the silent house once again. Later that evening, one of the police officers returned to Veronica's house, this time with a detective. His name was Detective Ryan Cole, a calm and observant man known for solving difficult cases. As the detective entered, Veronica quietly guided them to the living room. She was still shaken by what had happened. Detective Ryan greeted her politely and began asking a few questions about the incident. "Miss Hale," he began in a steady voice, "can you tell me exactly when you first noticed something was wrong?" Veronica thought for a moment and replied softly, "Right after I came to the sitting room with my coffee. I saw the footprints going toward that room." He nodded and wrote something down. "Did you hear any unusual sounds during the night? Footsteps, doors opening, anything at all?" She shook her head. "No, everything was quiet. I slept through the night." The detective looked around the room carefully. "And no one else lives here with you, correct?" "No," she said quietly. "I live alone." Ryan paused, tapping his pen lightly against the notebook. "All right," he said finally, then, with a careful and serious look, he started examining the footprints and the locker area himself. He didn't say much at first, but his expression showed that he had already noticed something unusual. The next morning, Veronica was still unsettled. She hadn't slept much that night, the strange footprints replaying in her mind over and over. Around mid-morning, the doorbell rang again. When she opened the door, she saw her best friend Susan standing there, looking worried. "Veronica, I just heard what happened," Susan said, stepping inside quickly. "Are you all right?" Veronica tried to smile, but her face showed her exhaustion. "I'm fine, just a bit shaken," she replied softly. She led Susan to the sitting room, where the faint marks of the footprints were still visible on the floor. Susan looked around the house in disbelief. Who could do something like this? The police said there were no signs of a break-in. Veronica sighed and rubbed her forehead. "That's what makes it so strange. The doors, the windows, everything was locked. But someone or something was here. Susan placed her hand gently on Veronica's shoulder. Don't worry. The detective will find out what really happened. As Veronica and Susan sat in the living room talking about what had happened, the sound of a car stopping outside caught their attention. A moment later, there was a firm knock on the door. Veronica opened it and saw Detective Ryan Cole standing there again. His face looked even more serious than the day before. "Good morning, Miss Hale," he said. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I just wanted to ask a few more questions." Susan stood up from the couch, looking curious and a bit nervous. "Detective, please come in," Veronica said politely. Ryan nodded and stepped inside, glancing briefly at the faint footprints that were still visible on the floor. "I've been thinking about this case," he began slowly. "There are a few things that don't quite add up." Detective Ryan opened his notebook and flipped through a few pages. "The more I look at this case," he said, "the stranger it becomes." His tone was calm, but his eyes were alert. "The footprint stopped near the locker. There are no signs of anyone leaving. And all the doors and windows were locked from the inside." Veronica frowned, confused. Then how could anyone even get in? "That's what I'm trying to understand," Ryan replied. He looked up from his notes, his gaze settling briefly on Susan. "Were you here yesterday morning when it happened, miss?" "Susan," she said quickly. "No, I wasn't. Veronica called me later." Ryan gave a short nod, but he didn't look away right away. Something in his expression showed. He was thinking carefully, watching not just what was said, but how it was said. Detective Ryan stood by the doorway. He glanced outside for a moment. Above the front door, a small black security camera was fixed to the wall, almost hidden under the roof's shadow. He pointed toward it. "I noticed the camera outside your house when I arrived," he said, turning back to Veronica. "I have checked the footage with the local police this morning. But here's the strange part. No one was seen entering or leaving the house during the night." Veronica's eyes widened slightly. "That can't be right," she said. "Someone was here. All my money and jewelry are gone." Ryan nodded thoughtfully.
Exactly.
"Which means whoever did this either already had access to the house, or they found a way that doesn't show up on the camera." Susan, standing alone, said quietly, "Maybe they came earlier in the day, before nightfall?" The detective looked at her for a brief second, his gaze calm but steady. "That's one possibility," he said slowly. "Still, I'd like to review the entire footage myself." Detective Ryan set his notebook on the table and followed Veronica to the small monitor connected to the front door camera. The footage from the previous night was still saved. He pressed play and leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on the screen. At first, everything looked normal. The camera showed the front gate, the quiet street outside, and the soft glow of the streetlight. Hours passed in fast forward. Not a single person appeared. No movement, no shadows, nothing unusual. Then Ryan slowed the footage down, watching it carefully frame by frame. Around midnight, a faint flicker of light appeared near the corner of the screen, just for a second, and then vanished. It wasn't clear what caused it. He replayed the moment again, narrowing his eyes. "Strange," he murmured under his breath. "There's no one there, but something blocked the light for a split second." Veronica looked uneasy. "What does that mean?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He watched the screen one more time, his jaw tightening slightly. "I'm not sure yet," he said finally, "but it means something was there, something the camera couldn't fully see." After finishing his questions, Detective Ryan closed his notebook and thanked Veronica for her time. "I'll review the footage again at the station," he said. "If I find anything new, I'll return. Veronica nodded, still uneasy. Susan walked him to the door while Veronica stood near the window, watching. The detective stepped outside, the cool air brushing against his coat as he made his way toward his car. Just then, an elderly man came out of the house next door, holding a small bag of groceries. He paused when he noticed Ryan. "Good evening, officer," he said kindly. "Were you visiting Miss Hale?" Ryan gave a polite nod. "Yes, sir. Just some routine questions." "You must be the neighbor?" The man smiled. "That's right. I'm Mr. Peterson, the landlord next door. Miss Hale moved in not long ago. Is everything all right?" Ryan kept his tone calm. "Nothing serious, sir. Just checking a few details, that's all." Mr. Peterson nodded thoughtfully and glanced toward Veronica's house. "She seems like a nice lady. Quiet, keeps to herself. Not many people stay there long, though," he added. Ryan raised an eyebrow slightly. "Is that so?" The old man shrugged. "Yes. Over the years, a few people have rented that place, but they all left after some time. Never said much about why." Ryan thanked him, watching as the man walked down the street with his groceries. He turned to look back at the house once more, standing quiet and still under the fading light, and for the first time, he felt a strange chill that logic couldn't explain. 2 days later, Detective Ryan was at the police department, reviewing notes from the Hale case, when an officer stepped in. "Sir, there's a woman asking to speak with you," the officer said. "She says it's about the robbery at Miss Hale's house." Ryan looked up from his desk. "Send her in." A woman in her mid-30s walked in slowly, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "Detective," she began softly, "my name is Martha Lewis. My husband, he's the one who broke into Miss Hale's house that night." Ryan's expression hardened slightly, though his voice stayed calm. "Go on." Tears gathered in her eyes. "He confessed everything yesterday. He said he did it out of greed, but I still can't believe it. He's never done anything like this before. I begged him to go to the police, but he ran away instead. I didn't want to hide the truth, so I came here myself." Ryan nodded slowly. "You did the right thing coming forward, Mrs. Lewis. We'll handle everything properly." Her voice broke as she whispered, "Please, just don't hurt him. He made a terrible mistake, but he's not a bad man." Ryan stood and gave her a reassuring look. "We'll find him," he said quietly, "and we'll give him a fair chance to explain." After Mrs. Lewis left, Detective Ryan sat quietly at his desk. Her words kept echoing in his mind. "My husband, he's the one who broke into Miss Hale's house." He looked down at his notes, flipping through the pages filled with details, the locked doors, the untouched windows, the silent camera. Something didn't add up. The robber was new to the area, a complete outsider. There was no way he could have known about the security camera above the gate or the location of the locker inside the house. Ryan leaned back, eyes narrowing. The thief hadn't acted alone. It had to be someone who knew the house. He didn't do this alone. A local guided him. For the first time, the pieces of the puzzle began to form a shape, and the face of a familiar figure quietly came to mind. Later that evening, just as Detective Ryan was preparing to leave the police department, his phone rang. "Sir, we've got him," an officer said on the other end. "The man who broke into Miss Hale's house. We caught him at the bus station trying to leave town." Ryan's grip on the phone tightened. "Bring him in," he said. An hour later, the robber sat in the interrogation room, tired, dirty, and scared. Ryan entered quietly, pulling out a chair across from him. He placed his notebook on the table and opened it without a word. "You're new in this town," Ryan said calmly. "So tell me, How did you even know about Miss Hale's house? The man hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. Then, slowly, he began to talk. He explained that he didn't know the person who told him about the house. He had never seen the man in person. All he had was a phone number. The stranger had given him every detail over the phone: when to go, what to take, and how to get inside without being seen. As the robber continued, Ryan's expression changed, first neutral, then faintly surprised, and finally sharp, like someone fitting the last piece of a puzzle. He closed his notebook slowly, his face unreadable.
"All right,"
he said quietly. "That's all for now." Without another word, he stood and walked out of the room, his mind already racing with what he had just heard. After leaving the interrogation room, Detective Ryan went straight to the technical unit at the police department. He handed the note with a phone number to the officer on duty. "Trace this," he said quietly. "I want to know exactly where that call came from." The officers began their work, running the number through the system. Minutes passed, the room filled with the soft clicking of keyboards and the low hum of machines. Ryan stood behind them, his arms folded, eyes fixed on the monitor. When the result finally appeared on the screen, one of the officers turned to him. "Sir, we've got the location." Ryan's eyes narrowed as he read the address. For a long moment, he didn't say a word, just nodded slowly, the faintest hint of realization crossing his face. "Get a team," he said calmly. "We're going there tonight." That evening, Veronica was in the kitchen when she heard voices and cars outside. Curious, she stepped out into her yard and stopped in surprise. 2 police cars were parked near the house next door, their red and blue lights flashing across the quiet street. She saw several officers near Mr. Peterson's porch, and among them was Detective Ryan Cole. A few moments later, 2 policemen came out holding Mr. Peterson by the arm. He looked calm but nervous, his hands shaking slightly as they led him toward the car. "Detective," Veronica called out, her voice full of confusion. Ryan turned and saw her standing there under the porch light, her face pale. "Miss Hale?" he said gently, walking toward her. "What's going on?" she asked. "Why are you arresting Mr. Peterson?" Ryan took a quiet breath before speaking. "We caught the man who robbed your house a few days ago," he said. "He confessed, but he also said he didn't work alone. Someone from this neighborhood helped him." Veronica frowned, trying to understand. "Someone from here? Who could that be?" "The robber gave us the phone number of the person who told him what to do, when to go, what to take, and how to avoid the cameras," Ryan explained. "We traced that number. It belongs to Mr. Peterson." Veronica stared at him, shocked. "No, that's not true. He's my neighbor. He's always been kind to me." Ryan nodded slowly. "I know, but the proof is clear. He planned everything." Veronica watched as the officers took Mr. Peterson to the car. The old man looked at her once, his eyes filled with guilt, before turning away. Tears filled her eyes. "I trusted him," she whispered. "He lived right next to me." Ryan looked at her kindly. "Sometimes the truth is closer than we think," he said softly. As the police cars drove away, the flashing lights faded into the distance. Veronica stood there in silence, her heart heavy with disbelief and sadness. The next day, Detective Ryan came to Veronica's house again. She opened the door, still looking tired and sad. "Detective," she said quietly, "I thought everything was already over." Ryan nodded. "It is," he said. "But I want to show you something Mr. Peterson told us before he was taken away." He asked her to come with him. 2 officers were waiting near the gate as they all walked to the back of the house. The path was narrow, with some old crates and broken tools lying around. Ryan stopped near the wall and pointed. "There," he said softly. Veronica looked down and gasped. A small hole had been dug near the lower part of the wall, half covered with wood and dry leaves. The edges looked fresh, as if it had been used recently. "This is how the robber entered your house," Ryan said. "Mr. Peterson told us everything. He dug this hole himself a few weeks before you moved in. He knew you were coming to stay here, and he made this plan in advance." Veronica stared at the hole, her face pale. "He made this himself?" she asked in disbelief. Ryan nodded slowly.
"Yes."
He wanted the robber to get in without breaking any doors or windows. And those large footprints you saw that morning, they were fake. He told a robber to make them using molds, just to confuse us. Veronica's eyes filled with tears. "He planned everything? Even before I came?" "Yes," Ryan said quietly. "He wanted it to look like something strange had happened, not just a robbery. And for a while, he fooled everyone." Veronica stood there in silence, tears running down her cheeks. "He lived right next to me," she whispered. "I trusted him." Veronica wiped her tears and looked at the detective. "But how did Mr. Peterson even know that I was coming to stay here?" she asked softly. "I never told anyone." Ryan looked at her carefully. "Miss Hale," he said in a calm but serious voice, "I need you to come with us to the police department. There's something you should see." Veronica frowned, confused. "What's going on? Why?" Ryan didn't answer right away. "You'll understand when we get there," he said quietly. A short while later, Veronica sat in the back of the police car as they drove through the quiet streets. Her mind was heavy with questions. When they reached the police department, Ryan guided her inside. As she stepped into a small room, she froze. Sitting across the table was Susan, her best friend, and Susan's eyes were red from crying. Veronica's voice trembled. "Susan, what are you doing here?" Ryan looked at her gently. "Mr. Peterson told us everything," he said. "He wasn't working alone. Susan was the one who told him about you, when you were moving in, that you'd be living alone, and where you kept your locker. She was after your property documents." Veronica's eyes widened. "My property papers? But why?" Ryan sighed. "Mr. Peterson said she planned to sell them. Those papers had details of your land and your new property under construction. She convinced him to help her steal them." Veronica turned to Susan, her voice breaking. "You wanted my property? Susan, how could you?" Susan didn't answer. She just looked down, tears falling on her hands. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Miss Hale," he said softly, "but now you know the truth." Veronica stood there silently, her heart shattered, realizing the person she cared for most had betrayed her, all for greed. She walked out of the police department. The evening sky was turning dark. The cold wind brushed against her face, carrying away the last of her tears. She looked up once at the fading light and whispered to herself, "Money can be earned again, but trust, once broken, never returns."